This episode is made possible by our sponsor, Omega Bright Wellness. I've taken their omega-3 supplements for many years, and so has my wife, and that's why I invited them to sponsor my podcast. I'm proud to have them. You can find all of their products online at omegabrightwellness.com, and bright is intentionally misspelled B-R-I-T-E, omegabrightwellness.com. This episode is also sponsored by Landmark College, another institution that I have warm personal relationship with in Putney, Vermont. It's the college of choice for students who learn differently. Learn more at lcdistraction.org. Hello, this is Dr. Ned Hallowell, and welcome to Distraction. Here we are coming hard upon Election Day, and I think most of us have opinions, maybe even all of us. You know the line about opinions. And I had a guest on some time ago who wrote a fascinating, wonderful, absolutely brilliant book entitled I Love You, But I Hate Your Politics. How many of us have people in our lives that applies to? And then, of course, there are I hate you and I hate your politics, but there's no but in that. So my guest is Jeanne Safer, a lovely last name, Safer, and she wrote a book called I Love You, But I Hate Your Politics. And you will or may remember Jeanne because we did have her on the podcast around this time last year. Thank you for joining me again, Jeanne.
I'm delighted to be with you, Ned. And I think there's no time more important than right now to deal with this issue that destroys relationships, really destroys relationships.
Yeah, and you speak from personal experience because you are a liberal and your husband is a card-carrying National Review friend of William F. Buckley conservative, as I recall.
But he's not a Trump supporter, so that has made life a lot easier.
Good.
I have to say. We still don't agree on anything except Trump.
What percentage of true conservatives, intelligent true conservatives like your husband, do you think will vote for Trump, and what percentage do you think will vote for Biden?
Now, not voting for Trump doesn't mean voting for Biden. You have to understand in that world. I would say true conservatives are appalled by Trump because they feel that he's destroying things that they hold dear. Mm-hmm. And a good percentage of National Review writers and editors do not agree with Trump. Mm-hmm. But Rick is not going to vote for Biden. He's just going to not vote for Trump. So 1 out of 2 ain't bad from what I think.
So will he vote at all?
Yeah, I don't know what he's going to do exactly, but I've said to him, I think you should vote for Biden. We've got to do everything we can. But at this point, we've been married 40 years,
right?
And you learn how much to say if you're lucky and you work at it. You learn what not to say, and I'm not going to hawk him about voting for Biden. Really, as long as he doesn't vote for Trump, that's all I can ask.
Right.
It's been very interesting to hear his point of view on these things because, authentic, decent conservatives are outraged by Trump.
Right. I cast my ballot this morning, and I sat at my kitchen table and got my paper ballot that came in the mail. And mm-hmm. I took my black pen, and it brought me back to days when I took those SSATs and SATs and whatnot. And yes. I cast my various votes, and then I had to vote on question 1 and question 2 in Massachusetts. That was the most perplexing part of the whole thing because it was really hard to figure out exactly what they were all about. It always
is, isn't it? They never explain it.
Yeah. Well, they had a long explanation, but I couldn't penetrate that either. But I did cast a ballot for each of those questions. I hope I voted in the right way.
Right way.
But it was a very satisfying feeling. And then I put it in the envelope and signed it. And I was bold enough to take it to the mailbox down the street. My wife said,
wow.
How can you trust that? I said, well, we have a mailman and I see him empty it. And I think he's going to take it to the town hall like it's addressed to. And So I trusted the United States Postal Service and dropped my ballot into the blue mailbox and walked away feeling very satisfied that I'd voted, exercised my opportunity as a citizen. So
without having to go to the wrong place, which is also important.
Yeah, exactly. I had kept social distance between me and the mailbox and dropped it in. So what is your advice to people who have good friends who, they as you say, I love you, but I hate your politics? How do you reconcile that?
Well, my advice to people is now I know this will shock you, but self-control is an awfully important thing in having relationships, even with people who totally agree with you politically. Mm-hmm. Why pick a fight? You're not going to win it. I guarantee you. I can swear to you, you will not ever win a political fight. They're not winnable. Mm-hmm. And if you start with that, like, how could you vote for that creep? How can you, hear my voice right away? You've lost the other person. Now, you can learn, and I have a lot of, recommendations about how to learn, and based on a lot of my own experience, you can learn to have a political conversation, but not if you want to change the other person's mind.
Why do people not change their minds?
People do not change their minds because we try to make them. They may change their minds, but not because of us. I think of trying to change a person's mind is very much like trying to get somebody to fall in love with you. Have you ever tried that? I have, and I haven't had very great success. You can't make somebody feel what they don't feel. And it's very hard for us to accept this. It's really, we can't bear it. How can this person...
just to interrupt you for a second, Jeanne,
sure.
I have a friend who I'm working closely with on a big project, and I'm a Biden supporter and she's a Trump supporter, and she says, Ned, I think I could convert you. And I said, well, have at it. I'm always open. So she feels that she can convert me. She's only got a few days left, but I tell my kids, when they would say, we want to have permission to stay up all night, and I would say, well, go ahead and try and persuade me. I mean, learning how to talk someone into something is a life skill. So I'd say, go ahead and try. If you can do it, congratulations. They were never able to do it, but at least I honored their attempt to try. And this friend who is very persuasive, I said, give it a shot. So, but you say it's an undertaking you can never win.
I do believe that. I really do. I think that it's possible to open a person's mind if they want it to be open. But, in your case, you already knew what you felt, and you weren't going to change it because somebody else was a persuasive person, because you weren't open to the arguments, And I think one of the ways to save relationships with anybody is to know the limits. We don't agree, even with people who have exactly the same politics. We're not in agreement about everything important. Mm-hmm. And I think this is something that people don't want to hear, because look at Thanksgiving is coming. Remember, this is
right.
a nightmare, because people start with these horrible political fights. And one of the pieces of advice that I want to give people is you can say no. You can say, this is Thanksgiving. Let's talk about anything other than politics. And everybody will kiss your feet because they feel the same way ultimately. Nobody likes these fights.
Right. Because now, particularly, they come very close to equating, you're an evil, despicable person if you hold this point of view.
Yes. Now, I've been fortunate that because I've had to be around people who disagree with me quite about a lot of things that I hold dear for many years, because Rick is senior editor of National Review. I've been part of National Review, a mascot of. I call myself the liberal mascot. I haven't changed one opinion, but I have learned that some of these people are good friends. Some of them came through for me when I had cancer, where my liberal friends did not, and they're sensible people, and they have a right to their opinion. I avoid it like the plague. They ask me all the time, What do you think about this? What did you think about the Supreme Court? I said, let's not,
Right.
And
right.
I feel delighted that I can say that. I don't feel a need to convince people who aren't convincible, right. And I convince people, like you, I convince people for a living. They pay me.
Right. Right. Over the past few months, I've spoken to my friend, the founder and creator of Omega Bright Wellness, Dr. Carol Locke, about the benefits of taking Omega Bright's omega-3s, CBD, and other supplements. Here's a clip from one of those conversations. Could you tell us a little bit about the recent study that showed Omega Bright reduced inflammation and anxiety in medical students?
This study, this is a great study. It was done at Ohio State, and it was done on medical students, 68 medical students without any medical problems, done over 12 weeks. And it was a blinded study, meaning the researchers and the students did not know if they were taking the Omega Bright or the dummy capsules. And what it found was a 20% reduction in anxiety and a 14% reduction in the inflammatory cytokine IL-6. Wow. So that you had a very powerful benefit from the Omega Bright shown in this study. And that's something that people could use right now in their life, reducing their anxiety and stress and inflammation.
Distraction listeners, you can save 20% on your first order at omegabrightwellness.com by using the promo code PODCAST2020. All right, let's get back to today's topic.
So, you were asking before about some tips about how to deal with these fights. So I have some specific ones, as well as the basic one of recognizing it's all based on knowing that you can't change a person's mind. Mm-hmm. That's a logical notion. Any more than you can make a person fall in love with you can't be done. Mm-hmm. And once you realize that, then a lot of other things open up for you. But if you're in a situation when somebody is goading you to have a political conversation, here's some things you can do. The first thing is do not raise your voice. As soon as you raise your voice, it's interpreted as shouting. Rational discussion goes out the window. And you have to be conscious of this. And one way to not raise your voice is to not drink alcohol before you have the political fight. Then you raise your voice, and then it's over. I had two guys, delightful guys, who had such a fight over Trump, and they were both Trump supporters. They broke into their cell phones over this because they had been drinking.
Yes.
Don't do it.
Yes.
Very, very important. And here's another thing. I created a word which I offer to you to use. I call it article thrusting. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine what this is? It's like I take an article from my point of view, and there I'm sitting with somebody who disagrees, either my spouse at the breakfast table or some friend, and I stick it in their face, and I say, read this. It'll change your mind. This is the truth. Do you think that's ever in history?
No.
Do you know how many people do it every single day?
But let me ask you a little bit more, less strategic and more underlying question. I'm a rabid Red Sox fan, and I know why that is. I grew up on Cape Cod. My family were Red Sox fans. I went to Fenway Park with my father when I was a little boy. So it's perfectly clear to me why I'm a Red Sox fan and why someone else who grows up in New York is a rabid Yankees fan, and we just stick with our teams. But that's not true with politics. I grew up in pretty apolitical family. I think they voted for Eisenhower and Nixon. They were Republican if you pushed them, but we never talked about politics ever. And it wasn't until I got to college that politics came on the main stage, and it was the height of the Vietnam War. I was in college between 68 and 72, and that's where my political views got formed. And where do you think they come from? And why do some people at a certain age declare I'm conservative, I'm liberal, and do you think it comes from their background, their socioeconomic status, their being left-handed or right-handed? I mean, do you have any theory as to where the what?
I think it's a very tough question. Some people identify with their parents as they get older. Sometimes people change, by the way. They've been liberal, say, most of their lives, and then when they get older, they get conservative because their father or mother was. I had a few couples like that. Right. I have been pretty consistent my whole life, but my parents never discussed politics. My mother was a Democrat. My father was a Republican. I think they both voted for Roosevelt. But political fighting just didn't happen. There's a statistic that might disturb and interest you too. When Rick and I got married, which was 1980, if you can imagine that, I was a child bride. When we got married, 20% of people married across party lines. Would you like to know what the figure is now?
What is it?
9 and going down.
Wow.
So people are never around anybody that disagrees with them.
Wow. That's why I love examples like Scalia being best friends with Ginsburg and John Kenneth Galbraith being best friends with William F. Buckley. I mean, I just think that's such a good example that you can be absolutely diametrically opposed to someone philosophically and, go out for dinner and to the opera together and be friends. I think we're losing that ability right now.
Totally. Well, one interesting thing about Bill Buckley, because I know you have some interest in him, is that he was dear friends with Allard Lowenstein, who was an extremely liberal congressman. Yeah. He endorsed him.
Yeah. Wow.
Because he thought so highly of his character.
Yeah. But now it's character assassination. And I just think that's really too bad, because not everyone who roots for Trump is a bad person, and not everyone who roots for Biden is a bad person. I mean, yet you find people equating, your worth as a human being with the candidate you're favoring.
Well, it's a disaster to me because I'm married to a man who disagrees with me on pretty much everything. I'm pro-choice, he's pro-life. That's our biggest problem. Not anymore. I mean, we figured out how not to do it anymore. But I mean, in every other way, he backs me up. He loves me. He reads every word I write. He's proud of me. I mean, so he's going to vote a different way, and he has different ideas about things. I've lived long enough to know that that's not the only thing in life.
Yeah. One of my favorite prayers is, I happen to be Episcopalian, but one of my favorite prayers is, Lord, help me always to search for the truth, but spare me the company of those who have found it.
I love that. I'm going to pick up that prayer, Ned.
There's too many people out there who have found it, and they're beating each other over the head with it.
Oh, my God. Being so self-righteous is just unbearable. And
isn't it?
The right and the left do the same damn thing.
Yes, exactly. It's the David Reisman years and years ago wrote a wonderful chapter in his book, the title of the chapter, The Ethics of We Happy Few. And it's sort of this smug self-satisfaction that we know the truth and all the rest of you peons just don't get it. And, that infuriates people, and rightly so. Where do you get off, claiming, that and I don't know? I mean, it's...
If you think of the number of people that you have cut out of your life or dismissed before you even know them, who could be true friends to you, who could be intellectual companions, it's tragic. It's just tragic.
It is. It is.
What we have in common. I mean, as a therapist, I have Trump supporters, I have Biden supporters, I have socialists,
Yeah.
And I want to know who these people are. I don't care who they vote for.
Yeah. Me too. And you scratch the surface of any of them, and you find a really decent, interesting person.
Often.
Not always. That's true.
Really, I think people need to know that they don't have to discuss politics, even if they're goaded into it by somebody else. You can stop the conversation. You could say, look, we're at Thanksgiving, we're out for a drink, whatever. Not these days, of course, but let's talk about something else. We're not going to change each other's minds here. Or why do you think about such and such? What do you think about this? Which is very different from saying you should think what I think.
Yeah.
No. So there are ways to have a political discussion, but you have to really be a disciplined person to do it. Yeah. So I'm all for self-discipline. I don't say things to people at National Review that I know that I know where we stand, how differently we stand. What am I going to do with that? I look for things in common. I look for humanity. And I think last time we talked, I mentioned the test that my husband and I created for whether somebody was somebody you want in your life. Mm-hmm. It's not about politics. It's called the chemotherapy test. And that is, if somebody is standing next to you while you're getting chemotherapy in the bed, which both of us have been through, you do not ask that person's political affiliation.
Right.
But when somebody shows up for you, when you need them, that is a real core value. That's what counts in character.
Absolutely.
And one of the people I interviewed had a family, a young woman I'm very fond of, had a family. They were all serious liberals, very, very serious. There was, towards socialism. So when her father died, and it was a terrible situation, the only person in the family who helped her was her uncle, who had become an evangelical and moved to the South in the military. Not one other person. And she used to fight with him on Facebook, another terrible thing to do. And she did something that is very rare. She wrote him an apology. I want to tell you, I apologize for being obnoxious to you because now I know who you truly are.
Yeah.
It's an example for all of us.
And to watch out for the hypocrisy of the self-righteous. Yeah. I'll never forget, I was pulling into a parking spot. Back in the days when I drove a Suburban, so ecologically wrong. But anyway, I did. And so I needed a big place to park. And so I was backing into a spot, and this little car snarked in and stole it from me. And, she had no right to do it. I had full claim to that spot, but she had a little car and she just stole it outright from under me. And, I wanted to get out and scream at her, but I didn't. But I did happen to notice when I finally did park that she had a bumper sticker on her car that read, "Practice random acts of kindness." So that was her random act of kindness for the day. It's just, and I think that's the trap many of us liberals fall into. We claim to be so giving and generous, but when it comes down to a parking spot that you both want, we're just as, nasty as the other person. And sometimes I think the conservatives are just more honest about self-interest and how much it governs behavior. But
I think it's some way they can be. Having spent an awful lot of time in that world as a visitor. Human nature, core values in politics are not the same. This is a big mistake to make.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. Underline that. Say more about that.
Well, because people that you agree with do not necessarily hold your values.
Exactly.
They don't pass the chemotherapy test necessarily. They won't necessarily be there when you need them. And people who disagree with you can come through for you. And once you see that, it breaks the sense of self-righteousness that I have the truth and I only want to be around people who have the truth.
Right.
And I'm passionately against Trump, but I'm proud of the fact that I know Trump supporters. Some of them are my patients. Some of them are my colleagues. That I can have a conversation with them, and I'm proud of it because I'm an adult and I've learned something.
And they're not evil people. You may thoroughly disagree with them, but they're not evil people.
Absolutely not. Now, there's some things. There's some people on the right and some on the left that I think are monstrous. Anybody who violence, right or left, is on my list.
Right. Right. Exactly.
But most people are not like that.
Yeah. No. Exactly. I want to tell you about Landmark College in beautiful Putney, Vermont. It is the best college in the world for students who learn differently, with ADHD, for other learning differences, or autism spectrum disorder. It's fully accredited, not-for-profit, offering bachelor's and associate degrees, bridge programs, online dual enrollment courses for high school students, and summer programs. They use a strength-based model at Landmark, which, as you know, is the model that I certainly have developed and subscribed to give students the skills and strategies they need to achieve their goals in life and really expand upon what they believe they're capable of doing. It is just a wonderful, wonderful place, and I can't say enough good about it. I myself have an honorary degree from Landmark College, of which I am very proud. Landmark College in Putney, Vermont is the college of choice for students who learn differently. To learn more, go to lcdistraction.org. That's lcdistraction.org. Okay, let's get back to today's topic. Most of us, would be willing to do almost anything to preserve freedom for everybody. But I just love the title of your book, and I love how you've lived it in a marriage. You love Rick.
That's why I love to write it.
Yeah.
Because I really do love him, and I hate his politics, but only certain issues do I hate them.
Right.
But you need to be able to live in the world with other people. Otherwise, we turn into two countries, and that's a disaster. And it's tragic how much it's happened. I hope this next election will change that a little bit.
Oh, it's got to, because we really need to come back together. I mean, we really need to create a culture of forgiveness, not accusation, and understanding, not, preempting the other person's, right to have an opinion different from ours.
I like the idea of forgiveness as a goal, of this kind of forgiveness. I really do.
No, absolutely. And I wrote a whole book about forgiveness, and one of the main points was forgiveness is a gift I know. Forgiveness is a gift you give to yourself.
Yes.
That you rid yourself of the hold that anger and resentment have over you. What was the title of your book about forgiveness?
Forgiving and not forgiving. Because I also argue that there's some situations in which you don't have to forgive. You can have a resolution without forgiveness. So that's my...
You never have to forgive. I mean, that it's... some people go through their...
You don't have to forgive in order to work through something.
Right.
That doesn't mean that forgiveness is not very precious and important.
I don't define forgiveness as condoning the deed that was done. You can abhor the deed that was done, but you renounce the hold that anger and resentment have over you.
Well, my position was that you can renounce anger and resentment without forgiving. I think forgiveness is based very much in a religious context, and then people feel terrible that they say, well, I'm not angry anymore, but I just don't feel forgiveness to my father who beat me every day of my life. And I said, okay, you don't hate him. You won. You don't hate him anymore.
How do you deal with disagreements in social media like Facebook? There are lots of nasty exchanges and unfriending happening on social media these days.
I counsel people to never have a fight on social media. It's a disaster. You can ruin your relationship with your grandmother, with your children. Awful, because people are uninhibited on social media, and they say things that they can't undo. Like my friend who was saying things to her uncle that she found, oh my God, I've said that this man's horrible, and he's my only friend in the family. I'm not a fan of never read anything that somebody that disagrees with you writes on social media, because you'll be tempted to get into an argument. You have to use some self-control, as I said before, and then you can have a relationship. Otherwise, you can't.
Right. It's one of those things where being right is so overrated.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, absolutely.
How about advice for our listeners as we head into the upcoming election and the fallout afterwards?
Well, things keep changing. Whoever wins, there'll be another change later. Politics changes all the time.
Right.
Don't try hard not to be bitter about if your side doesn't win, and try not to be too delighted around people who lost if your side wins.
Right.
That's my main piece of advice. Thanksgiving is coming after the election. You're going to have to sit around the table, very likely, with people who go the other way.
Right. Right.
And so one thing not to do is say, I am so glad your side lost. What do you think?
It's obvious, but a lot of people will be saying exactly that.
Yes.
Yes. They'll be saying, nah, and
listen to me now and put it in your head to not do this, because otherwise when you're there, you'll do it. And if somebody does it to you, deflect it. Say, let's not get into that.
Really, exactly.
Let's pray for the president to do well, whoever he is, and bring the world a little bit more together. And, and you can. One time I was at a party where people were starting to have a fight, and I was a guest there. I wasn't the host. Yeah. And I said, excuse me, could we please stop this?
Good
Being a therapist with a certain, ability to do that, I said, what are we doing here?
Right,
we're celebrating a party. What are you talking about? Why are you screaming at each other?
I mean, we just want to get along.
I give everybody the permission to intervene and stop it.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I'm inviting you to my Thanksgiving dinner party, that's for sure.
I'll even come into New York to come to
it. You're a godsend, Jeanne Safer, and your book, one of your many books, I must say, but the book we talked about today, I Love You, But I Hate Your Politics. And Jeanne Safer, you're a lovely lady to talk to, and I can't thank you enough. You have to promise to come back on next election year, okay?
Absolutely delighted. And anytime you want me, just give a call.
Well, thanks so much. That's going to do it for today. And as always, please reach out to us at connect@distractionpodcast.com. That's connect@distractionpodcast.com. Write in with your show ideas if you like Jeanne Safer, and I'm sure you did. Tell us that, and tell us who else you'd like us to have on, what other topics, ideas, thoughts. Please, we are guided by you 100%, and we depend upon your feedback. So connect@distractionpodcast.com. And please remember to like Distraction on social media and check out my videos. I've just started doing videos on TikTok. Can you imagine that? Only not too long ago, I didn't know what TikTok was. And now if you go there, you'll see 8 or 9 videos that I made. The handle is @Dr. Hallowell on TikTok, @Dr. Hallowell. And let me know what you think of those, too, please. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, Distraction is created by Sounds Great Media. Our recording engineer and editor is the amazingly talented Scott Persson, that's with 2 S's. And our producer is the also amazingly talented Sarah Guertin. Rhymes with curtain, but it's spelled Guertin. And I am Dr. Ned Hallowell, which is spelled phonetically. Thank you so much for joining me. Look forward to hearing you, seeing you soon. Bye-bye. The episode you just heard was made possible by my good friends at Omega Bright Wellness. I take their supplements every day, and that's why I invited them to sponsor my podcast. Shop online at Omega Bright, and that's BRITE wellness.com.